Commander Rylan Voss adjusted his translation matrix for the third time that morning, watching the pale purple figure approach through the horizon's edge's main corridor. Her name was Galactic HFY, and she moved with the fluid precision that all Velthani possessed, every step calculated, every gesture purposeful. "Commander Voss," she said, her voice carrying the characteristic musical undertone of her species. Her dark curly hair caught the artificial light as she inclined her head in formal greeting. "I am prepared for our linguistic exchange session." Rylan had been the mission's chief linguist for 5 years, but he'd never worked with anyone quite like Ja'ari. Where humans wore their emotions openly, she maintained perfect composure. Where humans laughed and argued and loved with abandon, the Velthani had built a civilization on emotional suppression and unwavering duty. "Please, just Rylan," he said, gesturing to the chairs arranged around the small conference table. "We'll be working together for the next 6 months. Formality will get exhausting." Something flickered across her pale violet eyes, surprise, perhaps, or amusement. But it vanished so quickly he might have imagined it. Their first sessions were strictly professional. Ja'ari would recite Velthani poetry while Rylan mapped the grammatical structures. He would explain human idioms while she took meticulous notes. But gradually, something shifted. It started with small things. When Rylan mentioned his favorite Earth foods, Ja'ari asked questions that went beyond mere linguistic curiosity. When she described the crystal gardens of her homeworld, her voice carried a warmth that seemed to surprise even her. "Your people find beauty in such chaotic things," she observed one evening, studying images of Earth's forests on his tablet. They'd been working late again, the corridors empty except for the soft hum of life support systems. "Chaos has its own order," Rylan replied, noting how she lingered on a photo of autumn leaves. "What do you find beautiful, Ja'ari?" She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, precision. Harmony. "The way starlight refracts through our temple crystals at dawn." Her voice softened. "But lately, I find myself curious about your chaos." That night, she stayed past their scheduled session. They talked about their childhoods, their dreams, the loneliness of deep space. Rylan found himself captivated by the way she tilted her head when thinking, the rare moments when her carefully controlled expression would crack to reveal something vulnerable underneath. "Among my people," she said quietly, "we are taught that emotion clouds judgment. That attachment leads to weakness." "And what do you think?" Rylan asked. Ja'ari met his eyes, and for a moment, he saw something there that made his breath catch. "I think," she said carefully, "that perhaps some attachments are worth the risk." As the weeks passed, their meetings became the highlight of Rylan's days. He found himself looking forward to her dry observations about human behavior, the way she'd almost smile when he made a particularly terrible joke, the increasing frequency of moments when she'd forget to be perfectly composed. Neither acknowledged what was growing between them. But in the quiet spaces between words, in the lingering glances and accidental touches, something profound was taking root, something that would soon challenge everything they thought they knew about love, duty, and the vast distances between stars. 3 months into their collaboration, Rylan and Ja'ari had developed their own rhythm. She would arrive at their sessions with 2 cups of that bitter Velthani tea she favored, while he brought human coffee and whatever chocolate rations he could spare. Their exchanges had evolved far beyond mere linguistic study. "Your species is fascinating," Ja'ari said one evening, reviewing footage of a human wedding ceremony. "You pledge eternal devotion based on feelings." "Not just feelings," Rylan corrected, noting how she pronounced the word like it was foreign. "Trust, companionship, shared dreams. Love isn't just emotion, it's a choice we make every day." She tilted her head, dark curls catching the light. "And if the feelings change, then you choose to love them anyway. Through the changes, through the difficulties." He paused, watching her process this. "What about your people? Do Velthani not form partnerships?" "We have breeding contracts," she said clinically. "Genetic compatibility, social standing, duty to the collective. Emotion is, discouraged. That sounds lonely. For a moment, something vulnerable flickered across her face. I used to think loneliness was simply the natural state of existence. Used to. Their eyes met, and the air between them seemed to thicken. Jari looked away first, her pale purple cheeks darkening slightly. Their relationship grew more complex as they worked together on increasingly dangerous missions. During a routine survey of an unstable asteroid field, their shuttle's navigation failed. For 6 hours, they drifted in the dark, uncertain if rescue would come. Relan, Jari said quietly, her usual composure cracking. If we do not survive this. We will, he said firmly, reaching for her hand. Her fingers were cool against his palm, but she didn't pull away. Among my people, we believe that to die with unspoken words is to dishonor the dead. His heart hammered. What words? She looked at their joined hands, her breathing shallow. I find myself thinking of you when we are apart. Looking forward to our meetings with an intensity that frightens me. This is not what I was taught to feel. Jari. I know this is forbidden, she whispered. For both our species. But I cannot seem to stop. The rescue ship found them an hour later, but something had shifted between them. In the days that followed, their professional boundaries began to blur. Jari would linger after meetings, asking questions about human customs that had nothing to do with linguistics. Relan found excuses to walk past her quarters, hoping for a glimpse of her through the observation windows. One night, she appeared at his door with a small wrapped package. It is a Velthani tradition, she said formally, though her hands trembled slightly. To honor those who have significance in our lives. Inside was a small crystal, perfectly clear, that seemed to capture and reflect light in impossible ways. It's beautiful, Relan breathed. It is meant to be worn close to the heart, she said, then seemed to realize the implication of her words. That is. Jari, he said softly, stepping closer. What are we doing? She looked up at him, and he saw the war raging behind her violet eyes, duty against desire, a lifetime of conditioning against the growing pull of something neither of them fully understood. I do not know, she whispered. But I cannot seem to stop. The emergency klaxons screamed through the horizon's edge at 0347 hours, jolting both Relan and Jari from their sleep. A massive solar storm had struck the station, and the primary hull breach was in Section C, dangerously close to the main life support systems. All qualified personnel to emergency stations, Captain Torres's voice crackled over the comm, this is not a drill. Relan found Jari suiting up in the equipment bay, her movements swift and precise despite the chaos around them. Their eyes met through their helmet visors, and he saw his own fear reflected there, not for themselves, but for each other. The breach is near the quantum core, she said, her voice steady through the comm, if we cannot seal it within the hour, the cascade failure will destroy the entire station. They worked in perfect synchronization, their months of collaboration evident in every movement. While Relan welded emergency patches, Jari rerouted power systems with surgical precision. The storm raged outside, cosmic radiation turning the void into a deadly light show. Pressure seal holding, Jari reported. But the secondary support beam is compromised. The entire section could collapse. Then we need to get out of here, Relan said, but even as he spoke, he saw the problem. The airlock they'd entered through was blocked by debris, and the emergency exit was on the far side of the unstable section. There, Jari pointed to a maintenance hatch. But someone needs to manually override the lock from the inside while the other escapes. They both understood immediately. One of them would have to stay behind. I'll do it, Relan said, but Jari was already moving toward the hatch. No. Her voice was firm. My people value duty above all else. This is mine too. The support beam groaned ominously above them. Without thinking, Relan tackled Jari away from the hatch just as a section of the ceiling collapsed where she'd been standing. They tumbled together, her body pressed against his as debris rained around them. "Relan," she gasped, her hands gripping his shoulders. "You could have been killed." "So could you," he said, his face inches from hers. "I couldn't let that happen." Something in her expression shifted, her carefully maintained composure finally cracking completely. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you risk yourself for me?" Before he could answer, the emergency override kicked in, and the hatch opened with a hiss of escaping air. They stumbled through together, the section sealing behind them just as the main support gave way. Later, in the medical bay, they sat side by side as the medics checked them for radiation exposure. The crisis had passed, but something else had begun, something that neither of them could ignore any longer. "We almost died," Jari said quietly, staring at her hands. "But we didn't. Because you saved me. Because you chose to risk everything for someone who is not even your species." Relan turned to face her fully. "Jari. No." She stood abruptly, pacing to the small window that looked out at the stars. "I need to understand. I need to know why you would do such a thing." He joined her at the window, seeing their reflection in the glass, human and Velthani, so different yet somehow perfectly matched. "Because," he said simply, "I couldn't imagine a universe without you in it." She turned to face him, her violet eyes wide and vulnerable. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. "Say it, human," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Do you love me?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, like a prayer, like the most important words ever spoken between two species. Relan felt the weight of it, the impossibility of it, the beauty of it, the truth of it. "Yes," he said, his voice soft but certain. "I love you, Jari. More than I ever thought possible." Her expression crumbled, but not with anger or fear. With something far more devastating, hope. "I never expected," she whispered, tears streaming down her pale cheeks, "that love could be returned. Not by anyone. And certainly not by a human." Relan reached out, gently wiping away her tears. "Why?" "Because we are taught that we are unworthy of such feelings. That emotion makes us weak, that attachment is a failing." She looked up at him with wonder. "But you love me not despite what I am, but because of it." "I love you because you're brilliant and brave and beautiful," he said, cupping her face in his hands. "Because you make me laugh and challenge me to think and see the universe in ways I never imagined. Because you chose to trust me with your heart despite everything you were taught." She leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. "Everything changes now." "Everything," he agreed. And as they stood there in the soft light of the medical bay, surrounded by the vast emptiness of space, they both knew that their love had crossed more than just the distance between stars, it had bridged the gap between two worlds, two hearts, two souls that had found each other against all odds. In the days following their confession, Relan and Jari existed in a state of breathless anticipation. Their official duties continued, but beneath the surface, everything had shifted. Stolen glances across the command deck carried new weight. Accidental touches in the corridors sent electricity through both of them. "This is madness," Jari whispered one evening as they met secretly in Observation Deck 7. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewport, but neither of them was looking at the view. "Is it?" Relan asked, his hands resting on her shoulders. "Does this feel like madness to you?" She looked up at him, her violet eyes reflecting the starlight. "It feels like awakening from a very long dream." Their first kiss was tentative, exploratory, two species learning the language of love across the vast differences between them. Her lips were softer than he'd imagined, her breath sweet with the scent of those crystalline flowers she kept in her quarters. "Your heart beats so fast," she murmured against his lips, her palm pressed to his chest. "Yours too," he said, marveling at the rapid flutter beneath his fingertips. "I thought Velthani hearts were supposed to be calm." "They are," she said, wonder in her voice. "But apparently, you have changed that as well." They began meeting in secret whenever possible. The unused cargo bay became their sanctuary, where they could talk and touch without fear of discovery. Relan brought blankets and music from Earth, while Jari shared the meditative chants of her people and the luminous poetry that glowed on her tablet in the dark. "Read to me," he said one night, lying with his head in her lap as she ran her fingers through his hair. Her voice was like music as she recited verses in her native tongue, then translated them into standard. "Beyond the crystal mountains, where the twin suns set, lies a garden where time stands still. Here, the forbidden flowers bloom, their petals soft as whispered promises." "Forbidden flowers?" Relan asked, looking up at her. "A metaphor for love that defies convention," she explained, her cheeks darkening. "It is considered inappropriate literature among my people. And yet you memorized it." "I memorized many inappropriate things," she admitted, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "Perhaps I was always meant to be a disappointment to my people." "You're perfect," he said, pulling her down for another kiss. "Absolutely perfect." Their relationship deepened with each stolen moment. They learned the geography of each other's bodies, the sensitive spot behind her ear that made her gasp, the way his breath caught when she pressed her lips to his throat. Her skin was cooler than human skin, but it warmed under his touch. His hands were rougher than she was used to, but she craved their strength. "I never understood," she whispered one night as they lay entwined in the soft glow of the observation deck, "why humans speak of drowning in love. But this is drowning." "And yet you're not afraid," he observed, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "No," she said, pressing closer to him. "I am terrified. But I am also, what is the word? Exhilarated." But their secret couldn't last forever. Commander Vex, Jari's superior and a traditional Velthani, began to notice her emotional displays. Dr. Hamilton, the ship's psychologist, remarked on Relan's improved mood and increased productivity. "You seem different lately," Captain Torres observed during a routine briefing. "More focused. More content." "Just enjoying the work, Captain," Relan replied, but he caught Jari's eye across the room and saw his own anxiety reflected there. The crisis came when they were discovered by Ensign Walsh during one of their late-night meetings. The young officer had been conducting routine maintenance checks when he stumbled upon them in the cargo bay, wrapped in each other's arms. "Oh. I'm sorry, I didn't. I'll just." Walsh stammered, backing away. "Ensign," Relan said firmly, "what you saw here." "I didn't see anything, sir," Walsh said quickly. "Nothing at all." But word traveled fast on a ship, and within days, their relationship had become an open secret. The reactions were mixed, some crew members were curious, others disapproving. The Velthani contingent was particularly scandalized, viewing Jari's emotional displays as a betrayal of their core values. "They are calling for your reassignment," Jari told him one evening, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "Both of ours." "Let them," Relan said, pulling her close. "We'll face whatever comes together." "You do not understand," she said, her hands fisting in his shirt. "If they separate us, if they send me back to the homeworld, I will be subjected to emotional reconditioning. They will erase what I feel for you." The thought hit him like a physical blow. "They can do that?" "It is considered a mercy," she said bitterly. "To free me from the weakness of attachment." "Then we don't let them," Relan said fiercely. "We find a way to stay together." That night, they made love with desperate intensity, as if they could somehow seal their bond so completely that nothing could break it. Jari's body moved against his with newfound urgency, her soft cries mixing with his deeper groans as they lost themselves in each other. "Promise me," she whispered against his neck as they lay gasping in the aftermath, "that no matter what happens, you will remember this. Remember us." "I promise," he said, holding her as tightly as he dared. "And I promise I won't let them take you from me." But even as he spoke the words, they both knew that forces beyond their control were already moving to tear them apart. The formal hearing was scheduled for the following week, with representatives from both the Human Colonial Authority and the Velthani Collective participating via quantum communication. The charges were serious: violation of diplomatic protocols, compromising mission objectives, and conduct unbecoming of their respective positions. "They want to make an example of us," Reland said grimly as they reviewed the formal accusations in his quarters. "Show that fraternization between species won't be tolerated." "Perhaps they are right," Jari said quietly, though her hands trembled as she spoke. "Perhaps we have been selfish, putting our feelings above our duties." "No," Reland said firmly, taking her hands in his. "What we have isn't selfish, it's proof that understanding between our species is possible. That we can be more than just allies of convenience." Captain Torres had been surprisingly supportive, though she'd made it clear that her hands were tied by protocol. "I've seen how you two work together," she told them privately. "Your partnership has been exemplary. But politics and regulations, they're not always fair." The night before the hearing, Jari came to Reland's quarters with a small travel pack. "I am leaving," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "No, you're not," he said, blocking her path to the door. "We face this together, remember? If I submit to reassignment voluntarily, they may be lenient with you," she said, not meeting his eyes. "You could keep your position, your career." "I don't want my career without you," he said, cupping her face in his hands. "I want you, Jari. Whatever the cost." She broke then, collapsing into his arms as sobs racked her body. "I am so afraid," she whispered. "Afraid of losing you, afraid of disappointing my people, afraid of becoming someone I do not recognize." "Then don't," he said, holding her tightly. "Don't let fear make this choice for us." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we make our own choice," he said, an idea forming in his mind. "Tomorrow, at the hearing, we tell them the truth. All of it. We make them understand that love isn't weakness, it's strength." The hearing room was packed with senior officers, diplomatic observers, and curious crew members. Reland and Jari sat side by side at the defendant's table, their hands clasped beneath the surface despite the formal setting. Commander Vex spoke first, his voice cold and precise as he detailed Jari's emotional breaches and failure to maintain proper detachment. The human representative, Admiral Chen, was equally critical of Reland's unprofessional conduct. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Admiral Chen asked. Reland stood, his heart pounding. "Yes, sir. I do." "Commander Voss," Captain Torres warned, "remember that anything you say here will be entered into the official record." "I understand, Captain." He looked at Jari, who gave him a small nod of encouragement. "What we have done is not a violation of protocol, it's an evolution of it. For months, Jari and I have worked together, learned from each other, grown together. Our relationship has made us better officers, better people, better representatives of our species." "Your emotional attachment has compromised your judgment," Commander Vex interjected. "No," Jari said, standing beside Reland. "It has clarified it." Her voice was steady, stronger than he'd ever heard it. "I have spent my life believing that emotion was weakness, that attachment was failure. But Reland has shown me that love is not the absence of strength, it is the presence of courage." She turned to face the assembled officers, her violet eyes blazing with conviction. "I love him. I love his curiosity, his compassion, his willingness to see beyond the boundaries others would place between us. And that love has not made me weak, it has made me whole." A murmur ran through the room. Commander Vex's expression was thunderous, but Admiral Chen leaned forward with interest. "You're saying that this relationship has improved your performance?" the Admiral asked. "Look at our mission reports," Reland said. "Our success rate, our efficiency, our ability to work under pressure. We're not just colleagues anymore, we're partners in the truest sense." "And if we allow this precedent," Commander Vex said coldly, "what message does that send? That duty is secondary to personal desire. It sends the message that understanding between species is possible, Jari replied. That we can be more than just separate races sharing the same ship, we can be a true community. The hearing continued for hours, with testimony from crew members, psychological evaluations, and lengthy discussions of precedent and protocol. In the end, the decision was closer than anyone had expected. By a narrow margin, Admiral Chen announced, the board has decided to allow Commanders Voss and KFVA to continue their duties aboard the Horizon's Edge under probationary status. However, they will be subject to regular review, and any decline in performance will result in immediate reassignment. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was enough. As the room emptied, Raylan and Jari found themselves alone with Captain Torres. You two realize you've just changed everything, she said, though she was smiling. There will be new protocols, new training, new ways of thinking about interspecies relationships. Good, Jari said, squeezing Raylan's hand. Change is long overdue. That night, they stood together in their favorite observation deck, watching the stars whirl slowly past. The future was uncertain, full of challenges and changes they couldn't yet imagine. But they would face it together. Do you regret it? Raylan asked. Everything we've given up, everything we've risked. Jari turned in his arms, her face radiant with contentment. How can I regret finding my other half among the stars? He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Around them, the universe continued its ancient dance, vast and mysterious and beautiful. But here, in the circle of each other's arms, they had found something even more precious than the wonders of deep space. They had found love that transcended worlds, hope that bridged species, and a future written in the language of two hearts that had learned to beat as one. Their love story would become legend among the crews of the Deep Space Fleet, proof that even in the vast darkness between stars, love could find a way to shine.